This incredible image, the catch, was part of Team Canada in the 2023 World Photographic Cup in the Nature and Wildlife category and received the Best of Nations award. Let's find out from the maker Jo-Anne how she managed to get the shot. Welcome to Award-Winning Images Explained. My name is Manpreet and I am your host. Jo-Anne is a bird and wildlife photographer from Cochrane in Alberta. In 2014, inspired by birds, she brought her camera out of retirement, and that resulted in stunning collection of images on her website called Nature in My Backyard. The next 8 years, connecting with like-minded photographers, she kept improving her craft, and in 2023 represented Canada in the World Photography Cup, where her image, The Catch, was awarded the Best of Nations award. So welcome, Jo-Anne.
Thank you, Manpreet. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, I'm excited to have you here because, I'm also quite a fan of, I do a lot of bird and wildlife photography myself. So I am absolutely excited to have you on the show. But before we get into the amazing image that you have captured, tell us a little bit about who Jo-Anne is and what is your background and what was your transition to photography? How did you make that transition?
So I actually started photography, taking my pictures of my family. When I was a kid, I grew up, I was a competitive sports in volleyball and figure skating, and I didn't have any images of me and all the hard work that I put in for, practicing and then going to competitions, etc. And so when my kids started to get into sports, I wanted to be able to capture them in action, so that they would have images of, all the times they were on the track for BMX and when they were in the swimming pool. So I bought some gear and started to take some pictures of them. And then a few other people said, "Oh, can you take pictures of my kids?" I'm like, yeah, sure. And, that transferred into, it was always a part-time thing, but I became an amateur sports photographer. So I took pictures of hockey tournaments, and I did ringette and swimming and BMX. And then when my kids grew up and finished high school, I was done taking pictures of people. And so I actually retired my camera. I put it away. And as you said, in 2014, when I moved to Cochrane, I back onto a wooded reserve, and there was all these birds in my backyard, and I was fascinated by the birds, and I thought, how hard could it be to take a picture of a bird? I can freeze a puck in midair. and so I quickly learned there's a lot to learn about wildlife and bird photography, and that was the beginning of my journey, or my transition into wildlife photography back in 2014. Mm-hmm.
So are you a photographer full-time at the moment?
I am not. This is right now. I would say I'm an emerging photographer. My full-time job is I'm the executive director for the Cochrane Tourism Association, and that it keeps me very busy. I'm very passionate about my community, and I'm very passionate about working with small town businesses and entrepreneurs and helping them to be sustainable and grow. And that's my full-time job, and my photography is fill my cup. I run out to the wilderness where there's usually no cell service, and spend many hours waiting for things to happen. And, when you're out in wilderness, nature just gives you some pretty amazing gifts.
Yeah. So talking about being out in wilderness, what are some of the preparations you did before you
Yeah.
went on this trip?
So this trip was I'm just gonna say it was pretty intense. Like I went with a group of photographers, and we chartered a float plane. We were in Alaska, and we chartered a float plane, and we flew. We were going to fly into the wilderness and then hike in to see the bears. And so we were going to be on the ground, and I wanted to prepare. I did a couple of things to prepare. One is I really wanted to make sure that I was ready for this adventure. And I spent at least 1 or 2 days a week just out in the field shooting. Didn't matter what was out there. I wanted to make sure that I was ready for anything, because as you know, as a wildlife photographer, things happen very quickly. And if you are not able to change your settings and just you can't think about it. You just got to be in the moment. And so I didn't want to be in that situation where I was going all the way to Alaska and not be prepared and ready for anything. And so I went out twice a week, at least as many times as I could, just shooting with my camera. And that's, that's anything. The 10,000 hours gets you to that kind of level where you're just thinking about things. And then for Alaska, you were on the ground. We were going to be on the ground. I have a bit of a passion for bears, and I can tell you about that. But, when you're in different areas, you're on a boat where you have some distance between you and the bears, or, you're next to a vehicle where you have some place where you can go. Well, we were going to be out in the wilderness, so there was no place to retreat. So I wanted to make sure I understood the bear. So I actually got certified as a bear guide, and to make sure that not only could I understand what they were telling me, but that I wasn't making any impact on them, and that they would continue to do what they do in their natural habitat. And that is the best way to see wildlife, is you are not influencing them. They are comfortable with you, so that they just continue to do what they do.
So photographers, if they're photographing bear, does it make sense to get themselves certified? Or only if they want to be a guide?
Well, I didn't do it as a guide, to be a guide. I did it for my own knowledge. And so the Commercial Bear Viewing Association in British Columbia has a course that you can take. And it's a 3-day online course and then a field day training. And it really talks about, it really was eye-opening. Like eye-opening with some of the things that you think bears are doing, or you think they're just activities, but they're actually stress points. And so when you really start to think about that, and when we were in Alaska, like we were pretty close to a lot of bears. We were, like in some cases, we were 10, 15 feet from 900-pound coastal brown bears. Yeah. So I want to know what they're thinking. Yeah. And there was some pretty unique experiences that really showcased the bear activity and what the interaction was, what interactions were happening. And so I'd love to share some of those stories with you for sure. Definitely.
We'll talk about it after we talk about the shot.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, a quick question comes to my mind. This course, it covered all kinds of bears, black, browns.
Yep. Yeah, and identifying bears, and it, bear habitat, different food sources for bears. They had a lot of videos, and then you had group discussions about what do you think the bear was doing, what do you think about what the people were doing, and as photographers, we actually brought some really interesting and different perspectives to the conversation. And so I think, like I said, it was a great experience for me, and I've connected with a whole different world of people. As you say, you connect with like-minded people, and they're there to protect the bears, and I'm there to photograph and talk about the bears, so people don't think they're as scary as, most people have in their mindset, is like, oh, like they're there to kill us. Well, they're really not. They usually ignore you most of the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just has kind of amped up that knowledge and preparedness for being out in the field.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said there was a group of photographers who went in the float plane. How big was your group?
We were 6. There were 6 of us.
Oh.
I went with an organization called the Wildlife Collective. So Zach Mills is a photographer from Canmore, and he does trips into the wild to photograph bears, and he has trips to Africa and Ecuador, and he's connected with people who are really passionate about conservation, and that's part of his platform. So I've been on a couple of trips with him. A good friend of mine, Jackie Matichuk, I travel a lot with. She is a professional photographer, also was part of the Team Canada this year. There was 2 photographers from the US, and we had a bear guide photographer with us who is part of the Grizzly Bear Foundation, Taylor Green. And so that was the 6 of us. And Zach set up the trip, and we, like I said, we got a chartered float plane every day, and we flew into these remote locations. It was hard. We hiked probably 15 to 20K a day.
Wow. With all the gear.
40 pounds of gear on your back, and we were in chest waders because you were walking across the tundra, and then we were in creeks up to our waist, and it was work for sure. But then you got to these locations, and then you just sat quietly, like we found a location, and then the bears would come in or come out because they know you're there. They can smell you, and so they would either be in the area with you, or they would choose not to come into the area with you. And so the photo that was part of Best of Nation, that photo was actually taken at the Brooks Falls, which is a famous place in Alaska where many photographers go. And I had a vision for that photo. That photograph, when I knew I was going there, I looked at lots of images, and I wanted that iconic picture of the bear fishing. And it is that intersection of the life of the salmon and the intersection of the life of the bear. And they both have, a journey. Like the salmon are trying to get up the stream to spawn and reproduce, and the bears need to eat food in order to reproduce, because this was a female bear that was on the falls. And so we spent 8 hours that day in Brooks Falls. The unique thing about being at Brook Falls, our experience is normally at Brooks Falls, like there's a platform where the upper falls are. And photographers are usually funneled through there, and you usually have half an hour on the falls, and then you have to leave and get back in line, and then you can come back and have another spot at the Brook Falls.
Wow.
And so that, you have to be, that's kind of usually the process of being on the falls. Well, that day we flew in very early. We were actually trying to get somewhere else, but we flew in early on our float plane. And there's 2 ways to get to Brook Falls. You can fly in on a float plane, or you can there's a ferry from King Salmon that goes from into the falls on an hourly basis. The weather wasn't wonderful, and so the ferry didn't run, and most of the float planes did not fly that day. And so our group of 6, we have a photo of the 6 of us, and we were the only 6 people on the falls that day. It was wow, it was right.
Yeah.
And so
I love your perspective too about the intersection of their lives, the salmon and the bear. That's a very interesting way to look at it. Now, talking about the 40 pounds on your back, what did your camera bag look like? And also, what did your, um, the overalls or anything that you took that was for the trip over and above what you would normally pack in your suitcase?
Yeah.
Talk to us a bit about that.
Okay, so I bought fishing waders, so chest waders with like straps. I had my pack is actually it's a waterproof bag. It's actually a motorcycle bag. It's from Riggs, because so you can kind of fold it down and strap it down, and it has a little air pocket that you can suck all the air out of it, because you never know what the weather's like. The weather,
Yes.
it rains, it's pouring rain. Like we had many different, and it changes all day long, which is part of the camera gear thing. So you want to make sure your gear is secure, and there's lots of great bags out there. My husband is a enduro rider, so he had one of these bags, and so I tried it and thought it was great. Gave me the flexibility to use it for my photography. So I have a Riggs bag that carries all my gear. My chest waders were new, and so they kept you dry and fairly warm. Underlayer, you needed like a polypropylene layer, and then depending on what the weather was going to be like, there was a second layer of like a dry wear, so that you were always layered and you could always take stuff off. I have a mosquito jacket. It's actually from Mark's, and so it's got something in it that keeps the mosquitoes away. We actually the bugs weren't too bad because the wind was crazy, but so I wear that. And I also have a hat that I've always either got a buff on, so you can put it around your face or around your hair. And I also have a hat that has like a mosquito kind of coating in it, because you never know what the bugs are going to be like, and they're all over your face. I brought netting. I didn't actually have to use it, but I had it packed with me. And that's probably about. Oh, and then for hiking, I actually have my camera hooked on with a Peak Design, so a Peak Design clip, but on an extension so that it's hanging there, and so I don't have to unhook it. I just pick it up and shoot, and then bring it back down. So it's a great way to be in the moment when things are happening instantly.
And what lenses did you take?
I have two cameras. I shoot with the Canon R5 and the Canon R7.
Okay.
Because I'm a bird photographer, the R7 has that crop censored reach, and depending on the day and what we were doing, I would go back and forth between the two cameras. So the R5 it does have a crop sensor in it as well, so you can actually switch back and forth between crop. It does change the megapixels really a lot, because at full frame you're at 45. When you're in crop in the camera, it was like around 20. And so I needed a second body to go on the trip. So the R7 came out in June, and we were going on this trip in August. So I went to the camera store and said, "What can you tell me about it?" Nothing. It's so brand new. Anyways, I picked it up and loved it. There was a bit of learning between the two cameras. They're just slightly different. But for that second body, the R7 was fabulous, and it took some great pictures. I have the 100 to 500, and then the 70 to 200, and so those are my two lenses that I shoot with. Most of the time I was with the 100 to 500, and then depending on the day, if it was a nice day, I would usually use the R7 because that just gave me the extra reach. If the weather wasn't wonderful, the R5 performs much better at lower light and cloudy days, so it would just kind of depend on the day.
Yeah. I use the R5 and it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Now, you want to share the image?
So this is the image that I took at Brooks Falls. I had this vision in my head. I wanted the bear to be fishing. I wanted the bear to be looking at me. I wanted a fish to be jumping. And you know, it was like a wish list.
Yes. How did you manage to pose them that way?
Well, that was pretty funny because we were on the platform and we were there all morning, and this bear is a mama bear. So she was a female, and only the dominant bears fish at the top of the falls. So she was fierce. She was chasing away bigger male bears, and the very amazing thing was she had a female cub, and that female cub was like right next to where the falls are. There's kind of a little it was a fish ladder, I think, but it's a piece of concrete, and the cub would sit there on the concrete or come out on the falls with mom while she was fishing. And there was all these really big bears, and this 2-year-old cub was standing her ground with mom. Like, it was amazing to watch, like the whole story. So she was my focus. I took lots of other pictures, and there was 20 or 30 bears, all like there was so much activity, but she was my focus. In the morning, we took a bunch of pictures, and then we went for lunch, and then we also had a permit to be down on the water. So we could be down on the water, not on the platforms. And so we walked through on the way to lunch, we walked through the water, took some different pictures, and it was a different perspective down there. And after lunch, we talked about where do you want to go? Where do you want to go photograph? And I wanted to go back to the falls. Like I still hadn't seen my vision shot. And so, Jackie and I went back to the falls, and we spent basically the next couple of hours there. And the guys were down on the water, and our guide, came with us, and she said, she gave us our 15-minute warning. Like, so we gotta go, we gotta hike to get to the plane. And it's like, all right, still no shot. I mean, there was lots of shots, but not this shot. And this was the last 8 images of the day. So 8 hours of waiting, and the last shot, it was like the fish jumped, and you shoot with the R5, right? So you there was a series, and bang, 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 and then just like, we gotta go. It was like, pack up the camera and start hiking. And as we're hiking, Jackie says to me, "Did you get that?" I said, "I sure hope so, because..." Did you get that? Because you never know, right?
Yeah.
And so this was the shot. Now, the shot was wider, of course. So this was the full shot on the falls, and then when I submitted it for the World Photographic Cup, I submitted it like this. The bear was, of course, very important, but the water was also really important because it's so loud. Like, the water is rushing, and it's so loud and it's so forceful that the water was really important to me in this shot. And it's with water, and it's really easy to blow it out, and then you don't have any detail. And so I actually underexposed this image just slightly, because you can always bring the bear and the features back, but if you blow out the water, it's done. It's done. So it was a little dark, but as I said, I knew that I could bring that back. And then when you go through the World Photographic Cup, it made it through round 1, and then it made it through round 2. And between round 2 and 3, the curators have a conversation, and they give you some suggestions. And so they suggested that the image be cropped tighter for more impact. and to work on some of the details of the fish and the bear so that it had more kind of impact and more color, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very much a naturalist. Post-processing is kind of still a learning curve for me. And so being part of the World Photographic Cup and really paying attention to those little details was really game-changing to get it to the point where it got nominated for, like I said, the Best of Nation this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, was this shot from the platform or from the water?
This was from the platform.
And do you remember what lens you used? What settings?
It was shot with the Canon R5. I was at 300 millimeters, so not fully extended. 1/2000th of a second. Mm-hmm. My f-stop was 5.6. My ISO was 1600. I was shooting on manual, and I had it underexposed by 1/3 of a stop.
Okay. And were you on a tripod? Did you have a?
Oh no, there's no tripods allowed on the platform.
Platform?
No. So it was handheld, and literally.
So 8 hours must be quite tiring.
Yeah, my arms were shaking at the end. You're putting your arms down because the bears are all moving, and then you're watching, and so you're just holding and waiting, and then things start to move, and you go, and then things start to move, and
so you don't even they don't even allow a monopod.
You can bring a monopod on the falls, but that there was with activity and things like that. It just kind of seemed to get in the way. I did have one with me that day, but I did not shoot on the monopod that day. You do have like a railing, so you can brace your arms on the railing. Truthfully, I don't remember. I don't remember where my arms were because it was 8 hours, and I got somebody saying we got to go, and I'm paying attention, and I was glad that we had that extra 5 minutes because that's one of the things in wildlife is wait 5 more minutes. Just wait 5 more minutes because sometimes that's when the action happens. And I was very fortunate to have this happen in those last 5 minutes of the day.
And what time of the year was this?
This was August. So there's this was when the salmon run in Alaska. This is actually the second salmon run. So they have one in July, and that's actually like when in Brooks Falls. That's I think probably the busiest time of the year. So this is later in the year. There is not as many salmon running. There is not as many bears in the area at that time, but there's also less people.
It's interesting because lower down in BC, it's end of September when the salmon run happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, what else do you remember from the trip? You had a few stories.
Yeah. So like I said, we flew into these remote locations. We got dropped off on our float plane, and then we just start hiking across the tundra to get to the water. We would find a location. We would sit on the water. There was one location that we heard that there was a mom with 4 cubs of the year, and that's unusual. But she had obviously had a great season before, eating a lot of food, and then came to having the cubs that in hibernation that year. So she had 4. We tried to get into this location all week, and the weather wasn't cooperating, and so we finally got there the very last day that we were at in Alaska, and we got off the float plane, and we positioned ourselves on the spit. So there was a little spot where the salmon would pool, and then they would go up the creek. But after, I don't know, first hour or so, Mama Bear came out with the 4 cubs out of the forest. She looked around. There was also fishermen in the area, and the fishermen were fishing up the creek, and she looked around and she's like, nope. She crossed and then went down the beach and disappeared, and was like, wow, okay, we saw that. There was no photo opportunities, but we saw it, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
There were other bears that, came in. We were sat in the same spot. The mom, about halfway through the day, several of the fishermen started to fly out. And so the fishermen would leave, and the planes, you could hear the planes leave. And then all of a sudden there was some action down at the end of the beach, and Mom, with her 4 cubs, comes back. Well, Mom fishing right in front of us. The 4 cubs were playing, wrestling on the shore. And Mama Bear decides that she's going to go around us and fish behind us. So she knows we're there. She makes the decision. As she got further away, the cubs got closer together. Mm-hmm. And as the cubs got closer together, one of the fishermen sees this and decides to come down the creek and get between Mom and cubs.
Uh-oh.
Uh-huh. Not good, right? So the 6 of us are sitting there going, okay, we're not sure what's going to happen. So I'm sitting on this side. We're all low on the ground. Zach's on this side, so I can see Mama Bear. And so I'm giving the crew, all right, she's still fishing. She sees this, and her body language completely changes. Now she's standing, her ears are forward, and then she starts coming across, and it's like, okay, here she comes. And the 6 of us are like, nobody move. Nobody move. Let's keep this, very tight. She comes to the edge, probably stands about 10 feet from Zach. Mm-hmm. And the fisherman now, of course, sees this, and he goes back up the creek. And so we're, silent. And Mom stands there, and she gives us all a big sniff. And then she walks out into the water, and now she's relaxed. She's not stressed anymore, so her ears are fine. She's not chomping. She's not doing any stress-related activity. But she walks in front of all 6 of us and looks at every single one of us. She looks at you, and I'm on the end, and she looks at me. Of course, I'm not moving. We're all just taking pictures, right? So we're behind the lens. Nobody's moving. But now, because she's walking in front of us, and she's pretty close, we're talking to her, right? Nice low voice. It's okay, Mom Bear. The fisherman's gone. Cubs are fine. It's okay. And so she gets to me. She turns around. She looks across at those 4 cubs. She doesn't make a sound. And those 4 cubs get in the water, and they start swimming across. And she turns around and goes back fishing. And so 10 feet from me, these 4 cubs of the year come out of the water. So the 2 oldest ones, a little stronger, got there first. They stood up. They're having a look to make sure the 2 younger ones are coming, and then they're looking at us through the grass. And then the 2 younger ones come, and the youngest one was a bit of a hellion, and he shakes off, and he goes around, and the grass is really tall, and he comes through the grass. Now I'm laying down, and he's walking towards me, and I'm dialing back my camera, and now I'm talking to him going, buddy, you're way too close. Off you go. And so the older 2 came in, and all 4 of them ran off, and for 45 minutes they played behind us, and basically we were babysitting those cubs while Mama was fishing. And then when she was done, she walked away, and the 4 cubs went with her, and it was a magical experience, crazy.
I think experiences like this will live the rest of your life with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you could see where the situation, somebody put us in a situation that was not good.
Yes.
Understanding that, we were all very calm. There were all four of us, 4 of the 6 of us got certified as guides. Taylor is an 8-year guide. And so our mannerisms, we weren't moving. Mom knew us because we were in the same spot for the entire day. Those are all things that create a trust, and that's how you let wildlife give you these opportunities. You don't push them. You could have followed them down the beach. That would have probably annoyed them. right? So it's not about you. It's about them. It's not about the shot. It's about the opportunity. And if they give you that opportunity, that's where you get these amazing experiences and photographs.
Nice. Well, thanks for that. Talking about that incident. It is. I'm sure a memorable one. I've personally also had experiences with bears like this, and it's incredible. Now, I think I saw on your website that you are planning to start classes, right?
I wanted to be able to put something together. I know a lot of people ask me questions about my photography and my wildlife photography, and I have been on a journey for the last 8 years and have learned some valuable lessons from other people. I invest every year in myself by setting goals, and those goals then get me to that next step. So when I first started, I needed to understand how to use my camera and, what do all those things mean? And that took some time and some energy and to kind of dial it in. And then, the whole post-processing thing. Okay, well, I'm still learning that. But when I was ready to step into that, post-processing world, I bought a course, right? Matt Klakowski is a 20-year veteran, and he has a video course, and you could do it in small bite-sized pieces. And so I took a course. And this past year, in 2022, I was able to, I started entering competitions. And the reason I did that, I went to a Kappa conference in 2019. I met some amazing wildlife photographers. Michelle Valberg was one of them. And I had the opportunity to have, a few questions at the end. And I asked her, how did you go from a portrait photography to like a wildlife photography, like Nikon ambassador, et cetera, et cetera? And she's like, I entered competitions. And I was fortunate to meet her again in 2022. And she said, she meets tons of people, and I said, oh, I met you in 2019. And she said, did I tell you? I asked you some advice. Well, what did I tell you? I said, well, you told me to enter competitions. And she said, did you? I'm like, well, I didn't when you told me that, because I wasn't ready. But in 2022, I started entering competitions, and I was in the top 100 for the Wild Art Photographer of the Year. I was part of Team Canada. I have another couple of images that are in stages of process. And so I wanted to be able to potentially give back to my community. I'm looking for maybe my next phase of life, which is in retirement. I would like to be able to share some of my knowledge. And so I have put together a photography session course. Right now it's just one-on-one, where when I have time, I build that in, and I have some clients that I'm working with right now, and they're learning, and I'm teaching, and it's a wonderful experience. So it's not fully completed. I'm really kind of testing it right now, but they are just the basics of photography sessions. I call it Photography 101. And it's for that person that wants to take that next step and get it off of automatic and learn how to use your camera equipment that you've spent so much money on.
Yeah. Michelle's image was also absolutely stunning.
Yes.
For last year.
Yeah.
What was your experience when you heard that you had got the best of nations?
Wow, I was pretty blown away. I mean, to be on Team Canada, I was honored to be chosen. I knew it was a great image, and they obviously thought it was a great image as well. We're all, as a team, we're sitting there, and the images that we found out that we were going to, like, our team was going into the international competition. When Best of Nation happened, it was like, I mean, the quality of images that Canada submitted was incredible. And, you know, the professional photographers that are part of that are here. And I don't see myself at that level because I really am an emerging photographer. I got years to learn and grow, but I was, like I said, humbled. I was honored. It's got me to a new level of, you know, people ask me questions and how did you happen? And I have that image in the gallery right now. And like, yeah, it was definitely a stepping stone in my photography career.
Yeah. Now, a photographer who is just starting out wants to get into wildlife or birding. What advice would you give them?
Study your subjects. Like if you want to be a bird photographer, you need to know what the behavior of those birds are. Know when they're in season, know where they're located, spend a lot of time in the bush. You know, you have to get up early in the morning, sometimes for like owls and certain species. Some are later in the day. So it's really about understanding your subject. And then, you know, my advice is the first time, just get a picture of the bird or the wildlife. If you just get one picture, it doesn't matter whether it's good or blurry or whatever, but it's your starting point. So when you see it and you take a picture, then you have it. And then work on that stage of getting it from a picture to a capture, because it's not going to happen immediately. You have to spend a lot of time with that bird or that wildlife to pay attention to what they're doing, and then what picture do you want to have? I still have, like, I have a picture in my head of an owl it's going to go up on my wall when I get it. and so practice, research, and, you know, hang out with like-minded people. Join a camera club, you know, join a group where you can go out with people, because when you're out with people and you have conversations with them, it's like, how do you set your camera? Like, what do you have your camera set up? It's cloudy today. Like, I can't dial it in. So sometimes just having that conversation is really a big part of it, for sure.
Yeah. Now, where can our viewers see more of your work or reach you if they need to?
So my website is natureinmybackyard.ca. I am on Instagram. I don't do a lot on Instagram, but I do post on Instagram, and it's Nature in My Backyard Cochrane. I am part of an artist collective in Cochrane called the Route 22 Artist Collective Gallery. You know, photographers a lot of times are not, photography is not considered art. And a lot of galleries do not open their doors to photographers. And so I knew that this was something that was important to me and important to our community. And so when I was part of the conversation when we started this collective 3 years ago, and photography has brought the gallery to a new level. And the painters and the sculptors and the local artists have really helped me step up my game as a photographer, because when I had stuff hanging on the walls and there was these beautiful paintings, it was like, okay, you know what, that's good, but I need to get better. So being part of the collective has been amazing. It is on Fifth Avenue in Cochrane. You can find it. There's also an online gallery for that. And then I've been asked to show my work at different events. So I was just recently at the Calgary Zoo for Wild for Art, which was fabulous. And there's patrons that come back every year, and you know, they ask me about my trips, and so of course this year I'm going to Africa, so they can't wait to come back and see photos from next year. And so a couple of local coffee shops where I have my stuff at Found Books in town. That's where you can find me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your knowledge and your image and how you created it. I know it's been thoroughly enjoyable for me personally, but thank you so much for coming on and having this talk.
Well, and I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to share the behind the scenes with Jo-Anne Oucharek and where I have come from. And this has been an honor. Thank you.
Now, if you've enjoyed this talk, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button. Thank you so much.